Hi, welcome back to CS170 spring session. Just go through a couple admin stuff and then we'll kick off. So here we are, we're on the week 10. So you can see for this week, we're continuing on with spreadsheet functions. So we'll show you a few of those this week. They're going to be tying in pretty closely to the assignments. So you do want to pay attention to these. You also have your exam 2 coming up in the following week. So do take advantage of the lab hours. You can send me some emails. If you are going to pop into my office hours, do try to send me an email and let me know so I can line up your times. If I don't see that, sometimes I might be popping on to something else. So do let me know if you want to pop into my office hours. Okay, and sometimes I might not be able to line you up exactly at the beginning of my office hours. If there's other people, I try to space them out a little bit. So I might give you another 15-minute slot somewhere else along the office hours. So again, just keep me posted, okay? But you can see here, you have the hourly exam. Um, Kind of similar look and feel to what you did for the first hourly exam. So you probably know what to expect right now. We're going to have like your proctoring. You'll pop into the proctoring if there's any issues or any questions. Uh, do make sure you do that. Don't wait until the end of the exam or well past the exam to come back and say whether you had an issue or not. Generally, at that time, it's kind of too late. So make sure you get a hold of someone if you have an issue or a question right away. Okay. All right. So I added March 29th. You can see my usual section here on Canvas. You can see I've already pulled in the modules, right? So, over here we have the modules for this week. I kind of pulled the links over to here and I'll be posting the various lectures to here. Okay, so I think that covers our admin side of things. Yeah, and note these different things with the different functions and stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of them, right? If I go into here, um, Excel. Well, of course, Microsoft has a whole bunch of listing them. So this place is pretty good. Corporate Finance Institute has a whole bunch of like Excel functions. Let me just click on it right now. Okay. So it's like a whole ton of them, right? You can like search through all of them to find more of what you want. And, it's kind of nicely set up. You can kind of search through all of these if you want. Okay. So I think there's a lot of resources when it comes to Excel for you to try to figure certain things out. But hopefully what I'm covering during the lecture will give you a good feel for what you need to know for the exam and what you need to know for your assignments. Okay. So here we go. So wildcards. All right, so that's one of the things here where it's very common, right? You'll be looking for certain things that is not nicely categorized, right? And you might be looking for something in common to pull them together, right? Like I said, ideally, you kind of have them nicely organized and you recognize them. So I'll give you an example, right? You look here under city and state, okay? Now, I kind of put it like this, but in some cases, you don't even have it like this. Sometimes you'll just have one cell that has Sacramento, California, like Sacramento, comma, California, all in one shot. So you kind of have to parse the cell yourself to pull out the fact that there's a state in there. Obviously that's a real pain in the butt, but in the real world, that's kind of what it's like sometimes, right? So this is actually a little bit better where you actually have a column for city and a column for state. Okay. Now, you can see some commonality here, right? California or Calif, California, and then Cal, right? Of course, you can see all kinds of ways, like if you have a whole bunch of data, like this could turn into a mess, right? So ideally, you have a consistent way to recognize, like, what is the state? If the state is California, maybe it's all CA or something like that, right? Something like this, you're kind of forced to do like these wildcard type of things. So that's kind of what this is talking about. And you can see that it's referring to count if, okay? The reason is, like, for you to do a wildcard with the if statement, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, not impossible. You can do it. The functions that you would need to do is kind of like a two-step thing to do it. It's actually above the scope of this class. If you wanted to, I can share a link on how you would do it with the if, your function with the if is a conditional, right? But something that supports it better, quote unquote better, is the count if. Okay, so let's say I want to, and you can just imagine if I had a whole bunch of cities and states and stuff like that. But let's say I want to do, like, what's the count for all of the things that, all of the cities that are in California. So I would do equals count if here. And then I would select the range. So let's say I do that. And then let's say I'll do just CAL, I guess. And then I close it off. Okay, so you can see it comes back with 3. Yeah, I don't know if there's any more to say other than that, right? So there are certain functions that work well with this, right? Like I said, if you do the if when it comes to text, it doesn't work so well, right? So if I do equals if, where this says the logical test here, it's basically better when you're looking at it in terms of numbers, right? So if greater than 0, if equal to 0, or something like that, right? When it comes to like sorting out different types of strings, not so good. Okay, so it is possible, like I said, but you have to do like another embedded function within that to do that, which is, like I said, something I don't really want to go into because it's not part of what's required for this class. So we'll leave that out. Okay, but I can send something separately if people feel like they want to learn how to do that. Okay. So in the interest of time, I'm gonna step into the Vlookup and then I'll cut off the lecture at that point. So Vlookup is actually probably one of the more important functions. Like almost any sort of like large scale spreadsheets that you'll be working with, where you're working with a spreadsheet is sort of like a pseudo database type of thing. You're going to inevitably have some sort of VLOOKUP, or you probably have a whole bunch of VLOOKUPs in there. Okay, so what I've gotten here is, well, just to sort it out. So there's some requirements to actually use VLOOKUP, right? I set up a VLOOKUP on this thing here, right? So what I'm trying to do with this thing is to say, if I order pizza, you know, can I get any discounts, like a bulk discount, right? So if I order 1 pizza, no discount. If I order like 5 or more pizzas up to 10, I'll get a 10% discount. Above 10%, above 10 pizzas, I get 20% discount. Above 20, I get a 30% discount, right? So this is like a little bit of a lookup. So then if I put in for like, let me just put in 1 pizza order here, right? And then what type of discount would I get back, right? So this is a very common thing that happens in Excel if you want to use this to do a VLOOKUP, okay? It's used in a ton. I can't even emphasize how many times this thing is used. So VLOOKUP is very common, okay? But look at this, right? First and foremost, it has to be sorted, right? So in this case, I can't really go in here and say, well, let me put 20 pizza and that's the discount up here, and then put like 1 over here and then 10 and 5. It has to be in this kind of order here, 1, 5, 10, 20. Okay, so the key or whatever you're searching has to be sorted. So that's why it's in big red right here. Okay, low to high. Okay. So this is where you have to look up value, right? So in this case, I'm setting the number of pizzas as what I'm going to be looking for within this table here. I'm calling it a table, but you see what that is here. Okay. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. And then the table array, which in this case, I'm going to set to be this. Okay. And then the column index, right? And the thing to kind of pay attention to a little bit here, unlike the arrays that you were working with in JavaScript, where the first number or the first bucket in the array was 0, this one starts off with 1 in Excel, right? So sometimes people kind of mix that up. So just remember this one as a 1 at the first column. So in this case, column 1, column 2, okay? And then this range lookup, I'm gonna talk about this in a second. There's another tricky part here, which it's very important you understand this distinction here, okay? So let's try a VLOOKUP here. So like I said, this is something where I wanna be able to say, how many pizzas am I ordering and what kind of discount do I get because I ordered X number of pizzas, okay? So let's do VLOOKUP, VLOOKUP, okay? Well, okay, so what's the lookup value? Well, this is the lookup value. How many pizzas am I going to order? So I click on that, then I put a comma, right? And what's my table array? So in this case, this is my table array. Okay, so I select the whole thing like this, and then I put a comma. And so what's the column index? So the column index is the number column that I want to pull out, which in this case is my discount. And remember, column 1, column 2, right? So discount is column 2. So I put in column 2. All right, now you can see it kind of bolds and defaults to true. So there's like this idea called approximate match and exact match. So approximate match means that above the value that you're looking for, it will pull that in if it doesn't find any more. And I'll show you exactly what that means, okay? And then exact, and that's the default, right? Keep in mind, that's the default behavior. So if I don't put something in here, that's what the default behavior is gonna be, okay? And then false means exact match. That means either it finds whatever number in that table or nothing, right? So in this case, either it finds pizza 1, pizza 5, pizza 10, or pizza 20, okay? Otherwise, it just says, I don't find anything, right? Whereas the approximate match, I can put in like 2 pizzas and it will still come back with something because it will have found 1, and then it goes past 1 and it sees that the next one up is 5. So it says, oh, you must mean that you want 1, and then it'll come back with that, okay? So that's the idea between approximate match and a exact match. Even though Excel defaults and lets you kind of put it in without anything, I always find it useful to actually put in explicitly that you're going to be looking for that true. You can say, well, it defaults it, right? Who cares? I think just in terms of like readability for other people looking at all of this, you know, if they look at quickly, it's easier for them to understand what your logic is if you just explicitly put it out there like this, okay? And there's some other things related to VLOOKUPs. You'll get into this more when you actually do a lot of VLOOKUPs. You know, people say, well, what happens when you have and you'll see it a lot, you have like a broken VLOOKUP or something. If I modify this table, or do any number of sort of things, I can easily break this VLOOKUP. And it's like kind of like the bane of people's existence when they're looking at spreadsheets with broken links and broken VLOOKUPs and stuff like that. But we can go into that a little bit later. All right, so I do that, okay? So in this case, I just happen to have a 1 in there. I just kind of left that in there from before, right? So I have a 1, so it came to here, and 1 and 0% discount, okay, which is fine. Actually, let me format this into a percentage. Okay. Well, what happens if I punch 2 in? Well, you can still see that it came back as 0, right? Because what happened was it looked in the table, it saw there was a 1, and then it went to 2 and 3, 4, 5. There was nothing else there, right? It saw the next one up as 5. So it said, oh, okay. So I'm going to go back to what I already found, which is a 1, and make that a 0. What happens if I punch in 5? Okay. So actually, why did that was stupid. I put in the wrong thing here. I should put in a 5 here. Okay, so that's 10%. All right. Let's 10%, like let's order 10 pizzas. I go to 20%. Let's go 11 pizzas. It's still 20%. Let's do 20 pizzas. It's 30%. 21 pizzas. It still goes down to 30%. So it dropped off the end of the table and said, oh, there's no more entries. So this is your maximum, right? You're going to get 30%. Okay. So what happens if I don't have something, right? So let's say I came over to here, and instead of starting the table range at H6, which is this cell here, which has the 1, let me start it over here at H7. So if I do H7, you can see that was the table, right? And let me punch in a 1. Oh, I broke it, right? So the point I'm making here is that you have to have a starting point, a starting record that it finds, right? Once you get into that first record and then you're able to keep on going down that table there, then this all works fine. But in this case, you can see I defined this as a table. If I went in here and I put in something below this range, below 5, the VLOOKUP is going to break, right? So VLOOKUP is dependent on you finding at least the first entry, right? And then it will work off of that. So like I said, it goes past the 1, and then if the next one doesn't line up to what you put in, it'll come back and say that's the value that you wanted. Okay, so let me go back to here and I'll set this back, set this to here, and you got the full table again. Okay, so what happens if I change this to be false? I need the exact match now. Okay, so 1 is fine, but what happens when I put in 2? Well, it didn't find anything, right? Punch in 10, okay, and then I punch in 20, okay. Now, I was mentioning before where, you do stuff like this and you just imagine a regular normal size spreadsheet, like one that you use in the corporate side of things. You could have hundreds or thousands of VLOOKUPs, right? It's like all over the place, right? Among other things, right? There's other things in Excel that can break pretty easily too. But, how can you help yourself here? So there's this idea of like if error. Okay, so if you put this inside of whatever you're kind of doing, right, where if Excel returns an error, then you can kind of put in some troubleshooting information. Okay, so it says value, right, and a value if there's an error. Okay, so if you wrap things up within here, say if there's an error to display 1, 2, 3, let's say the cell that you put in or whatever, right? Some sort of like troubleshooting or diagnostic information that really helps you a lot in terms of trying to figure things out. I mean, there's other things now that helps you to try to kind of debug Excel and whatnot. But if you're putting together your own spreadsheets, this idea of like putting if errors in various different things that you're doing, most likely you're going to put in like the cell reference that you put in. Maybe you want to display the type of error, whatever it is. into this to help you with troubleshooting and diagnostics. This is just an aside, right? You're not going to have to do this for your class. But if you guys are ever into doing like Excel and you end up with ginormous spreadsheets, you could help yourself a bit if you start to put in like little diagnostics, little cross checks, just to validate things, right? And that could be like a whole topic and whatnot, but it's just an aside for you here. Okay. All right. Anyway, so this is what I want to cover for this particular video clip. This slide is just another demonstration of like the VLOOKUP, right? So here they put in the VLOOKUP. You can see the B11, which is over here. Like you punch in the tree, and then you have the table, essentially the B14, the C42. What column do you want? You want the second column, and then you're going to be doing approximate match, which is why you put in a true there. Okay, so that's part of the VLOOKUP. It basically on this is doing it across like your inventory of trees. Okay, so take a look at that. When I come back for your next video clip, I'll be doing this type of stuff, among other things. We have charts and whatnot, series fill, which I actually did the series fill before, I think in one of my earlier video clips from last week. But anyway, we'll come back with this in another video clip. So hopefully you guys are okay with this one, and I'll see you back soon.